Good evening. My name is Sarah Stern.
And I am Haley Stern. On behalf of the Town of Newcastle Holocaust and Human Rights Committee and the Horace Greeley Club Enough, we welcome you to our program commemorating International Holocaust Remembrance Day.
Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge and thank Enough's advisor, Mrs. Harrison, for your support and guidance, and we would like to thank the Newcastle Town Board, Town Supervisor Lisa Katz, Town Administrator Jill Shapiro, and Theater Manager Lisa Tiso for the use of this beautiful venue for tonight's program.
84 years ago, my great-grandparents, Helen and Kuba Beck, were teenagers when war broke out in Poland. They were separated from their families, stripped of belongings, and forced into labor camps. They suffered the unimaginable, witnessed brutality and torture, and lived amongst inhumane conditions. In the end, my great-grandparents were two of the lucky ones, as they were saved by an upstander, Oskar Schindler, who took them to work in his factory and to the best of his ability shielded them from the brutalities of the war.
Many years later, my grandparents began to travel around the U.S. to tell their story of survival with the goal of educating others about the Holocaust. They felt a responsibility to speak out against hate, discrimination, and prejudice, and to foster kindness, empathy, and acceptance. Most importantly, my grandparents believed that educating others is the key to preventing this type of tragedy from happening again. As survivors like my grandparents age and are no longer able to speak about their experiences, we have a responsibility to continue their quest. The recent increase in hate crimes, coupled with the prevalence of hate speech on social media, makes this mission even more relevant today.
Today, we have the privilege of learning from Holocaust survivor Helga Luden as she tells her extraordinary story of survival. It is our pleasure now to welcome Lisa Katz, Town Supervisor.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank the members of the Greeley Enough Club and the Town of Newcastle Holocaust and Human Rights Committee for hosting this event in honor of International Holocaust Remembrance Day. And of course, I want to thank Helga Luden for being here today. We are honored to have you here and to be able to hear your story. Today we gather to mark the anniversary of the liberation of the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp, which was 78 years ago tomorrow, and also to remember and to honor the victims of the Holocaust, one of the darkest chapters in human history. On this Holocaust Remembrance Day, we pay tribute to the 6 million Jews and millions of others who were murdered by the Nazi regime. We also remember the survivors whose lives were forever changed by the atrocities that they endured. The Holocaust was a systemic and deliberate attempt to eliminate an entire people, and it serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of hatred and prejudice. It is important that we never forget the atrocities committed during the Holocaust, so that we may continue to learn from these tragic events and to strive to create a more just and compassionate society. As we remember the victims of the Holocaust, we also reaffirm our commitment to being upstanders, to fighting anti-Semitism, racism, and discrimination in all its forms. We must work together to build a world where everyone is treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their religion, race, or ethnicity. So let us remember the Holocaust not only as a Jewish tragedy, but also as a human one. We honor the memories of all those who suffered and died during this period and pledge to work toward a world where these atrocities never happen again. So let's take a moment of silence in honor of the victims of the Holocaust. May their memories be a blessing and a reminder of our shared humanity. Thank you. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our State Senator Peter Harcum. Pete co-sponsored legislation which has been signed into law requiring Holocaust education in the New York State school curriculum. Senator Harcum, come say a few words. Thank you for all you did. It's so important.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you to Supervisor Lisa Katz for your wonderful remarks and the kind introduction. It's so good to be here with all of you. We want to thank the Town of Newcastle Holocaust and Human Rights Committee. We want to thank all of the students from Enough who are here today, and also want to thank my new friend Helga Luden. We had a chance to visit out front, and although what she's going to talk about is incredibly serious, she really has a remarkable sense of humor and a brightness. And she was talking about all the blessings in her life, and to turn tragedy into blessings is a gift, and we thank you for that, Helga. Thank you so much. You know, it's so important that young people are involved in Holocaust education. I want to thank all of the young people who are here today. When I was your age, this was much closer. My father fought in World War II in France and Germany. Many of my very close friends' families were directly impacted. Their families were from Eastern Europe. You know, back then, today you see Mercedes, BMW, Volkswagen. Back then, my friends their families would not buy German automobiles. That's how raw it still was back then. I also had the opportunity in my 20s to visit Dachau, which was really a life-altering experience. Then years later, I went to the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem. Again, a life-altering experience to be there. I've been to the one in Washington. I've been to several others. That one really takes your breath away. And as Lisa and the other speakers alluded to, you know, it's so critical that we don't repeat the mistakes of the past. And there are parallels. You know, the rhetoric that we hear today, the hate speech, the constant spewing without correction, is what started the whole thing with the Holocaust. It became the norm. It became accepted. And then the dislocation, and then eventually the violence, and then the worst atrocity that humankind has ever seen. So it's so vital that we learn the lessons and remember. You know, it's easy to get overwhelmed by the sheer numbers, and remember the individual stories, as we'll hear from Helga. Children, mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, family units, just torn apart. And that's what we need to remember, is the individual humanity of the victims of the Holocaust. And it's so easy today. You know, the studies show how many young people, I'm not saying in this room, but across the state and nationally, have no understanding of the Holocaust because it's not taught in schools anymore. And when there's that void of information, that's when the conspiracy theories come in, that's when the deniers come in. And as Lisa mentioned, it is so vital that we fill that void and we tell the stories and we denounce hate and anti-Semitism and bigotry in its every form, every time it rears its ugly head. And that's why tonight is so important. And I really want to thank the young people from Enough. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce Marley Horowitz and Ben Prober. Please join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Town Supervisor Katz and Senator Harcum.
Good evening. My name is Marley Horowitz.
And I'm Ben Prober.
It is our pleasure to introduce to you Mrs. Helga Luden.
Mrs. Luden was born in 1934 in Ulm, a town in the Rhineland region of Germany. In 1939, at 5 years old, Helga was sent with her mother to Gurs transit camp in southwestern France. At almost 89 years old, we are honored to have her here today.
In 2023, it is more important than ever to educate the next generation about the atrocities of the Nazis and the hardships the survivors have faced, as well as the ongoing anti-Semitism. Even 80 years later, the Holocaust is still being denied and silenced throughout our nation. It saddens us to see the continuous hatred that has been regularly occurring throughout our country.
As vice presidents of the Enough Club, we believe education can help fight against the skewed narrative that drives hatred. It is our job as students to appreciate every first-hand account of the cruelties that occurred so that future generations will forever internalize these stories and pass on this history. We educate to better ourselves, we educate to better others, we educate to never forget.
We are honored to have the privilege to hear this miraculous story of survival and how individuals' actions can make a difference. Please join us in welcoming Mrs. Helga Luden, who will be interviewed by the Enough Club presidents Jack Rosenberg and Elliot Science.
Helga, would you please tell us about where you grew up and your childhood?
I was born in the Rhineland of Germany, in a place called Ulmen. It was a very small town. Was one main street, and my grandparents had a business there a generation. And they were cattle dealers. They had a bed and breakfast. There was a bar. We were the only Jewish people in town for a whole 100 years. Now, I was born there. My father was one out of 11 brothers and sisters who was alive at the end of the war. So, I was born in 1934, and I'm sorry, I'm going very slowly. And when Hitler started to come into power, the police would come would always come and tell us that we should leave town because they're not responsible for their young youth. The SA, they said Hitler has to, all the youth has to go into the Hitler Jugend, and where the Jugend is the young people have to join the Hitler Youth. And then one day my father was imprisoned, and they said they apologized. The police my father knew everybody in town. Everybody knew us. And the police apologized to my father that they have to take him into the police station. That's all Jews have to be taken in prison. And he went to prison willingly, and he came back a few days later, or a few weeks later, I don't know exactly. And he said to my mother that we have to leave town. Things don't look so good. My grandparents would not leave. But one day, he was back in jail, and he came back. He said, we have to leave. And that same night, I remember like yesterday, my mother had a girdle that with metal bars in it. And you know, the old-fashioned girdles where you have to tie them in the front with metal bars. And she was a very beautiful woman, but she wore a girdle. And then she was never so heavy. And she took out, one night, we sit together with my grandma, my mother, and they take out all the bars from the girdle. And I my mother showed me how to take money and roll money. And I sat and rolled money, and they put it into the spaces where those metal bars were. And also in the bra, she always had money with her all her life, and I still do that myself sometimes. when I go somewhere, I say, oh my God, I gotta have money. But I don't put it into the girdle.
Olga, can you describe what your life was like in 1939 for your family?
Yes. Well, in 1939, first of all, we left town. We left my grandparents. And I don't know whether it was 1939, but of course we left a little earlier than 1939, the town. And we went into a horse and buggy, and they covered me up, my mother, my father, and me. And we were going to go away. And we went to Luxembourg. And we go to Luxembourg, and my mother goes to the police station, and she bribes the policeman with money, and he gives her a pass to go anywhere she wanted to go. For me, I have a pass still. I still have all that here. All those papers I have, actually, the actual papers. And so that's what we did. But it was too late. By the time we all had those papers, we were lined up in Luxembourg. And in 1939, we were taken on a cattle train. My father was taken away completely to a different working camp, an Arbeitslager, a working camp. And we didn't know where he was. My mother and I went on a cattle train, and we went to a place called Gurs, G-U-R-S. It was in the southern part of France. It was from there, they shipped you out to Auschwitz. I have all those papers here. And if I may, just hold it for a second. Excuse me, I was organized. Okay. Yes, 1 second. I'll here. This is here. Well, you know. All right. It doesn't matter because it. So many papers that I was very organized when I came in. I went through this so many times already. Yes. What? No. It doesn't matter. It was here. I have a paper. Gurs, die Vorhalle from Auschwitz. When you went to Gurs, when you go to Gurs, from there they shipped you to these camps where they killed you. And we were transported to Gurs. And the barracks, my mother and I were in a barrack all the way at the end, near the barbed wire. And another thing I forgot to say. While we were lined up in Luxembourg, a Nazi officer came and he asked all these women, what can they contribute? What is your profession? And my mother said, I have no profession, but I play the piano and I sing beer songs because I come from a bar. And that was that. And of course we went to Gurs. And then all of a sudden we were there, we were on a piece of wood. I was on top, my mother on the bottom, and all of a sudden an officer comes and he says, Nazi officer comes, he says, wo ist die Frau, wo plays the piano? Where's the lady that plays the piano? And she said, she's the one. So they take her to a officers club where there's a piano, where they all take a rest, and play. So she plays all these beer songs, which I know myself by heart, still do. And then she used to hear what's going to happen. She used to hear amongst them talking. The Nazi officers would talk to each other, and she would listen And she would come every night. Every night she came to me. She put me on her lap. And she said, look, these people are bad people. We're going to have to go away from here. You go first. We're separating. You go behind the barracks. It was always very damp. It was always raining there. And the barbed wire, she says to me, you go right behind and you krabbel dich raus. You crawl your way out. And you don't have to do it one time. Every night when I come back, you go back there and you crawl in the same spot. I was really frightened, and I always did what my mother asked me to do. And I did that. Every night she came, she was taken out, and she came back, and then one night she said, today you have to leave. And she also, while all this was going on, and she took me every night, she told me, lieber Gott, God creates everything there to eat. This grass, you can eat grass. You can eat pilsen, mushrooms. You can eat blumen, flowers, yellow ones, daisies, everything you can have out there. God creates everything there. And then she promised me a farmer will find me. Somebody will find me. And I'm only to say my name and the day I was born, and because it was not a Jewish name. Helga Schmitz, Schmitz, was not a Jewish name. And she said I could give him my name and the day I was born, and everything else, make yourself dumb, make yourself stupid. You don't know, you don't remember, you don't know. Everybody who asks you, don't answer them, just make yourself stupid. And she drilled it into my head until the day I left. Tonight, she said, you have to leave. So I did that. She kissed me and hugged me. She says to me, I promise to find you. Don't worry, I will find you. And so, and I went by myself underneath the barbed wire, which I remember getting hurt from. And I crawled my way. I remember going through the grass, yay high. And I don't know where I was. I have no idea how far I walked. I have no idea. All of a sudden, I dropped. I was dropping into the grass, and I don't know what happened to me. I fell asleep, or I was hurt. I was sick, and I don't know how long I was there. I have no idea. But I do remember, all of a sudden, somebody touches my face, slaps me in my face, and wakes me up. And I look, and I see 9 soldiers, 9 in uniform. And they were French Jewish partisans fighting in the woods. And they took a picture of me. And that picture was taken from a tiny little picture. A friend of mine blew it up when I was speaking. And she said, I'll promise to give it back to you. And that's me with the French partisans. And they took me, they saw it, they carried me. The man with the black beret, the one in the back, this one here, carried me. And he took me to a convent. Of course, when I saw a cross, I knew where I was. I mean, I come from a town, we were the only Jewish family. So I knew exactly that I was not in any particular Jewish place. And they asked me, Mother Superior didn't ask me anything. She saw that I was very ill, and they put me into a little bed, into a crib. And I woke up one day. She wrapped me with all kinds of schmatters, rags, and she tried so much to help me. And she asked me all kinds of questions, and all I said was, I don't remember, I don't know my name, and that's it. And then when I woke up, I was much better, and I was running. I was all over the convent, and of course I knelt. Whatever they asked me to do, I knelt in front of the cross. I opened my eyes up. In back of me, there was a cross by the crib. So I knew I wasn't in any place Jewish, and I knew that when I saw Mother Superior who she was. And I had the run of the place, and they were very patriotic to France, and they taught me French. And every morning and every night they sang the French national anthem, and I know it by heart till today. And à los enfants de la patrie, jour de gloire est arrivé, and so on and so on.
Helga,
And,
wait, before we get to the next part, which is really amazing,
Yes.
you need to take your medicine.
Oh.
No, so hold on. We're going to pause just
No,
for
it's
one
not.
second.
I'll
You
wait.
sure?
I'm sure.
You sure?
I'm sure. I'll wait a little bit. At any rate, and they were wonderful to the French Jewish partisans. They gave them to eat. They came to eat, and every time they went, they came back. They gave them to drink. The nuns were amazing. And then one day, I was told they're going to take me. They're going to go. There's a place in Aix-en-Provence that has a room. They said there were a lot of children, and they took me to Aix-en-Provence in a what do you call it? In a horse and buggy again, and someone took me to Aix-en-Provence, and there was a huge room, not as big as this room, but somewhat reminds me of a very large room. And there was lots of children there that were found like me, that had nobody but no parent, nobody. And I was there. And then one day my mother comes, and she's looking for me. I'm telling you, that was like incredible. Now, people ask me, how did your mother leave Gers? Well, wherever we stopped along the way, I would ask her questions. She would say, I'll tell you another time. And of course, she never told us the truth. But I feel like someone took a liking to her. Someone where she played and she sang. Some Nazi, some we don't know. She would never talk about it. But he let her go. And she was left to find me. And she found me. From there, of course, she still had money. And I also have a picture of we went to we went to what do you call it? A home. Someone took in also Catholic people. They took us in, and like the Anne Frank story, we were hidden in an attic, my mother and I, and she had also papers from the police, and all I know is that she was a very smart lady. She played along with everyone, and she was intelligent, and she did the right things, and there were two girls there. One was about 17, 18-year-old at the time, and a little sister. And every time a gendarme, which is a French policeman, would come to the door and would ask questions whether they had something going on, she would say no. But before that, she would warn us with a broomstick. She would make noises up in the ceiling, and we knew that someone is looking to find something wrong with her. And we, right away, no matter what we did, we were quiet. I was taught not to move, not to say anything. And we lived there for quite a while, until one day, this lady was also a go-in-between for somebody else. And she came and she said, we have to leave the house because there's a boat that's leaving to America. We have to go to Marseille. And I also have papers that my mother got to go onto the boat. No passport, no nothing. She just I don't know how she did it. I have no idea. But anyway, so we go back on the horse and buggy, and we go to Marseille, and we go to the port, right directly to the port, and we see all these big crates and everything, and there's a boat standing there called the Serpa Pinta. Now, it was a beautiful, beautiful boat. It was like a cruise ship. Am I going to? Oh, okay. I don't see. And we were instructed to go on the very bottom of the hull, very bottom of the boat. And the boat was going to leave Marseille. There were a lot of crates. There was like shipments and stuff like this. We were 750 Jews were on that boat. And I even have, I have a, okay, of how many there were. Do me a favor, hold this for a second, because this is a very important thing. It's a very important. It's written in English. It was written here. 1 second. I hope I'm not rushing anybody, because I'm very slow moving. Did I leave anything? Yes. No, this one here, yes, but not, there's another one. That was Trujillo's Jews, but okay. I guess I don't know where it is. I have so many papers here. I was very orderly before I came here. I had it all in order. All right, doesn't matter. But there were 750 Jews on that boat. And so we were told we were going to America, to New York. And that's what we were told, except that the boat had problems. It landed in the island of the Azores, and it landed in 4 different places. That's what I wanted to.
Helga?
Yes.
I have to ask before you continue. Yes. Was there anything exciting that happened on that boat? Someone you might have found?
Yes, a lot of excitement. A lot of excitement. Good thing that you asked me that. I'm glad, because I don't believe anything out. Every day there was a levaya. Levaya means a funeral. Every single day we were allowed to go up on the boat when there were no boats around, little ones, big. We were not allowed to. As soon as somebody saw a little boat, we had to go down to the hull. But when there was nobody coming, there was a funeral every day. Levaya is a Hebrew word for funeral, and there were men who had very bad illnesses. There was typhus and all kinds of illnesses, and they all died, one after the other. Every day they used to say a prayer for the dead. And every day my mother used to go up with me, and we heard. And also there was a lady that had a daughter like me. She was on top of my mother. She stayed on top of my mother also on the boat. And we became very close friends. As a matter of fact, till today, she lives in Anaheim, California. Marion's mother, she's my age, and we are in contact with each other still till today. And one day, my mother says to Marion's mother, we should see maybe it's very quiet. There's no more deaths now. Let's see what we could do with the men downstairs. Maybe we could help the men. And my mother goes downstairs with Mrs. Lintz. Her name is Marion Lintz. And she goes downstairs with her. And they see a lot of men. And amongst them is her husband and my father. And he was so emaciated. He was a skeleton. And my mother hardly recognized him. But he was there. And he came to himself again. And we were all glad that he is much better. After a while, don't forget, we went to that's why I wanted to, we stopped in about 4 different places because the boat had problems, had big problems. And
I do have a question.
Yes.
What happened when the boat arrived in America?
Well, just before that, I must tell you something. We did not come to America, straight to America. We went to the island of the Azores. We went to 4 different islands, and we landed in Africa, in Casablanca, Morocco, Africa. We lived there for 3 months. The boat was being repaired, and we lived in a house where there was no room. One laid on top of the other. And for 3 months, we lived very, very terrible conditions. There was a lot of things going very bad there. Very dirty, very, very dirty. We had crawling all kinds of animals on top of us, all kinds of bugs, all kinds of stuff that eat your blood. It doesn't matter. But I remember that. And then we were told that the boat is leaving for America, from Africa. And we went on the boat, and 6 weeks we were traveling, 6 weeks on the boat, till we came to these shores. And also during the day we were able to walk up on the deck, and again, every time there's another boat, we went down. But it was so much better because we had fresh air, even regardless how dirty it was in Africa. And it was very, very terrible. But we came to these shores, and Roosevelt was the president. And he would not let any more Jews, no more immigrants into New York. And here we're standing in a boat right near the Statue of Liberty. Give me, you're tired, you're poor, and all of that. And they wouldn't let us into this country. And did I skip something? And is it okay? Because they have to keep me in line because I get very flustered.
No, you're doing good.
By the way, going back to the boat, I read this article in the paper that Rabbi Schneerson, the president of the Lubavitcher rabbi, was on the same boat in June 12, 1941, and that's another thing that I took out of the paper. But anyway, so we stay in the Statue of Liberty, and I see all these little boats coming we were 750, and we are now 600. We are now 645 Jews left from 750. Everyone else passed away. And all these little boats come, they can't let us in. And Cuba didn't want, Venezuela didn't want, Brazil, nobody wanted us anymore. And so finally, there comes a Dominican Republic. So the Dominican Republic lets us in, and it was 645. We were called Trujillo's Jews, and that's where I learned to speak Spanish as well. And it says Dominican Republic saved 645 Jews. Holocaust Day, the community is begging. And the funny thing is, now going back to my hometown, my mother had a brother, and he was a Zionist, and he had gone to college to Cologne, and I never met his wife. I never met my uncle. I don't remember him, and we didn't know. We thought that he had died. He was in a concentration camp. We all thought that, but he was a Zionist. He wanted to go to Palestine, but he never made it because of the English. You know the story there. And so P.S. So we get to so finally the boats come, and they made a deal with Trujillo. Leonardo Molina Trujillo was the president at the time, and he took in all these Jews. Now, when we got there was a little town called Sosua, and we established a community there. But who's there? My uncle. He was one of the first people that left Germany, and he knew he was going to the Caribbean, and with his wife, they couldn't have children, and he was there, one of the first founders of the Sosua. And my mother couldn't believe it. I'm telling you, I've had so much mazel, so much luck in my life. And so therefore, that's the story there. And we lived there for 4 years. And we lived on a farm. Everyone got 80 acres of land with cows and chickens and all the things that go with being a farmer. My father was never a farmer. He was always in business, but we had people working for us. But going back to my hometown, he married my mother in 1932, and he was one of 11 brothers and sisters who lived in the next town, and a shidduch was made already. What do you call it? An arranged marriage. When they were younger, an arranged marriage was made. Can you imagine? So that they knew each other and they got married. Okay. So P.S. So my father knew my uncle and my mother. We were all very happy to be together, and we lived on the farm there. But
and this is the picture. Hold on. Look, right behind you. That's the picture of their family.
That's my mother and my uncle standing there.
And did you stay in the Dominican Republic for a long time?
We lived there for 4 years. Now, true, we did not live on the farm too long, probably around 2 years, because my sister was born in Puerto Plata. That was the city next to Sosua. And she's 8 years younger than I am. And after that, my father said that he wanted to go into business, and he made salami, bologna. He was a wurst maker. How do you say? He was a butcher all his life here, but he also made salami, bologna, pastrami. You know, deli. Right. That's what he went to school for, and so he said he was in touch with Marion's father, with my friend's father. He lived in Santo Domingo, in Ciudad Trujillo. That was the city itself. And he told him to come because he told him that he would make a better living in the city, selling bologna, salami, and all of that. So my father, my mother discussed it, and they left Sosua. Now, that was not so easy because my mother was was instrumental in helping my father. At night, he used to make all the bologna salami with everything by hand, and it was very, very tough. But Mr. Linz went from door to door. He was a door-to-door salesman. He had a college education in Germany, and what happened was he spoke 4 languages. Before he went there, he spoke Spanish. So he went with my father went with him, and from door to door he sold bologna, salami, liverwurst, and of course they would pay like a few pennies this week. All the people, he had to keep a book, he had to keep to keep going every time, and then when they paid up, he gave more. Anyway, he was a door-to-door salesman he became. And then one day my mother said, this is no place to raise 2 girls, because who are they going to get married to? And my mother's father didn't matter, but the mother, she said, there's nobody here. There's nobody here. Okay. So P.S., one day, there was another thing. There was a library. And in the library, there came 2 newspapers. One was the Aufbau. That was a German-speaking paper called the Aufbau. And then there was a paper called the Forward, a Yiddish paper. Every month, that paper came. And my mother you had to write your name. If you wanted to read the newspaper, you had to put your name into, and you had allotted a certain amount of time. My mother remembered she had an uncle who moved to New York in 1929 with 3 sons. 2 of them were married, and 1 of them was never married. And she remembered it was Max Oppenheimer, but she didn't remember when, but she remembered in 1929 he left for America, for New York. So she said, look, let me read the paper. So she takes the German paper, the Aufbau, and she reads, and in the back, there was always an ad there, I am looking for so-and-so. This was already in 1945. And she said, it said, I am looking for, so she said, I had an idea. She said she's going to send in a few pesos. She's going to write to the newspaper that she wants an ad to put in an ad into the paper, that she is looking for Max Oppenheimer, and her name, Else Schmitz, Else Schmitz, geboren Furnish, born with Furnish, and she's looking for him. And sure enough, after 3 months, she gets a response. Yes, I am your uncle. I'll get you a visa to come to New York. And then one day, she gets the visa, and she says, my uncle is still on the farm. All stays there. And we are in the city. And we said goodbye. It was December 31st, 1945. We took a plane. The uncle paid for everything, paid for the plane to come to Florida. And it was January 46. We heard there was a big snowstorm in New York, and we have sandals on, and it's freezing, and it's cold. There's no coat. There's nothing for us. And my father said, look, he is only concerned with the 2 of us, the 2 girls. And he says, I was always the speaker for everyone because I loved languages. I always wanted to be in the United Nations and translate because I loved languages. So P.S. And he says to me, we're going to go, this was on Collins Avenue, I don't remember exactly where. There was a shoe store, Tom McCann shoe store. There were so many different shoe stores. I remembered the name, but I forgot it already, the name of the shoe store. And we're standing in front of the shoe store, and my father tells me, everything that I said, he said to me, Going in there, tell them you don't want shoes from the window. Remember, the shoes from the window are the most expensive. You want them from the back that he didn't sell last year. If it's a boy's shoe or whatever, it should be shoelaces, a closed shoe. So, and we go in, my mother, my sister, you need 2 pairs of shoes for your sister and me. So we go in the shoe store, and the young man comes over, about 18, 20-year-old, and he says, can he help us? I says, yes. Quiero zapatos, yes. Pero no quiero de la ventana, no quiero zapatos de la ventana, porque quiero muy baratos. I want very cheap shoes. So he said, why? Because I'm going to Nueva York. Okay. So P.S. And he says to me, ¿Qué otros lenguajes hablas? ¿Qué otros lenguajes que hablas? Yes. ¿De dónde está? Soy de Alemania. Nació en Alemania. I was born in Germany. My parents speak German. And he says, un momento. And he goes in the back, and he brings this man, not a young man, but an older man, and he's just short like my father, and he brings him, and he says to him, where are you from? And my father and him have a whole conversation, and he's like the 6 cousins of my father's family. I don't know how it goes around in circles, but all of a sudden they're embracing. Of course, we got the shoes for free. They were too big, they were too small, but he gave it to us for free. And from there, we went to New York. We arrived here. We happened to have lived on Elwood Street with my uncle. He had a 6-room apartment, furniture, all furnished from Europe still. He came with a loft, with a whatever you call it, how do you say it, with all the furniture, everything, in 1929. And we lived there. My father went to work as a butcher, and so on. And this is near Fort Tryon Park. Elwood Street, near Broadway. There was a Jewish Memorial Hospital there. I don't know if it's still existing today, but we lived there. And for quite a while, except my father didn't like my mother to be their housekeeper. He had an idea that the uncle, may he rest in peace, I admire him for taking us. My father paid him back every penny. He didn't want to have anything for nothing. Every time he had a salary, he paid him back. But he didn't want my mother to be his housekeeper. She washed and ironed, and every night there was food on the table. He used to go shopping, and the uncle used to go shopping. My mother didn't shop, and whatever he brought, she had to cook. And
I do have one last question. We would like to know is it hard for you to share your story?
Yes, it was very hard to share my story when I started a few years ago. But I came to the conclusion that if I don't tell the story, no one's going to know anything. I was just a greenhorn in America, and I just felt that. And then, of course, a lot of other survivors I heard were talking, and of course, they had a lot worse stories than I have, because I had a lot of mazel, I had a lot of luck in my life. And also, I think it's important to people should know what was going on and all these things. But anyway, so the story goes like this. So we lived there, and every time on Fort Tryon Park, up on top of the hill, there was a looked like a convent, and my mother would say, "Look, I'm back in Germany," because all these churches, I don't remember if it was a church or not, but it was all the way up high. And every time we passed, much later on, we used to take a car. My father bought a car, believe it or not. He drove a motorcycle in Germany. But and he bought a car here in New York. He was very determined to learn to drive, and he did. And we had the car for like 10, 12 years. But anyway, that's the story of my life. And of course, when we came here, we lived with the uncle, and then we lived. My father said to the uncle, "This is my wife was not a maid in Germany, and she was wonderful here with you, and she thanks you very much for everything, Uncle. But we want to move." So we went to the Lower East Side, 345 East 5th Street, between 1st and 2nd Avenue, a cold water flat, a bathtub in the kitchen, a bathroom around the outside the apartment, but it was home sweet home. And we shopped on Delancey Street and what do you call it? The other street, I forgot already. Orchard Street and Delancey Street. And we walked and we did everything that we had to do. And my father spoke Yiddish, a very good Yiddish he learned because he left the German alone. And we lived there for quite a while. And then we discovered, my mother found out that there was on my grandmother's side, there was another, there were two sisters that lived in Brooklyn, and they also had one daughter that was my age, and my mother thought it was a good idea for me to meet them. And of course, I went to Washington Irving High School. I graduated when I was 17. As I said, I wanted to be an interpreter, but of course, I didn't get a chance to go to college. I had to go and work give my money to my parents when I came home. And my mother would give me an allowance to travel and take a subway and so forth. But to make a long story short, we lived in the Lower East Side until my mother found these two cousins. And one of them lived in Brooklyn, and one of them lived in the Bronx. And the one in the Bronx got in touch with my mother that there's an apartment in an elevator building, and a 3-room apartment. So we moved. The living room was a part of the living room, and there was a pull-out bed, and my sister and I slept on a pull-out bed. Of course, we made our beds every morning. My mother was a very wonderful housekeeper. She wouldn't want nothing on the floor, nothing. I mean, she was a crazy cleaning lady. She was just impossible. And before we had breakfast, we had to have everything done. And so I lived there, and I went to school. My sister went to school there, and I went to Washington Irving. I took a train. It was 1680 Crotona Park East, and it was near 174th Street. Okay, I'm going to tell you something nice. I met my husband, how I met my husband. Everything in life is beshed. Beshed means it was meant to be. I really, truly believe that. All of life is just, God knows, God knows. And I have so much to be grateful for. But anyway, to make a long story short, every Saturday we used to go to synagogue. My father said, look, we are Jews. Let's practice our Judaism. After all, it's been years since we haven't practiced it. And there was a synagogue near me, so we went to shul every Shabbos. And then one day, my father said, look, I was a kosher butcher all my life, and we're going to go back. Of course, I ate everything in front of me. In Africa, you name it. I had, you name it, pigs, bacon, you name it, because we were starving. We ate everything that was put in front of us. We didn't ask any questions. Was it kosher or not kosher? It was not, there was no questions asked. Anyway, so my mother said, look, let's start a new life here. This is America. And of course, every time I asked her questions, when I came home, somebody wanted to know how I learned Spanish and how I learned French, and they wanted to know my story. So I was to say, I don't know. My mother wouldn't tell me. And my mother said to me, look, let's leave all that behind. Those were bad years. Let's leave it behind. I don't want to talk about it. Daddy doesn't want to talk about it. We have a new life in America, and this is a beautiful country. Let's be grateful that we're here. Okay, so to this day, okay, so P.S., every Sunday morning, we used to take a bus on Southern Boulevard, and on Southern Boulevard, we used to go to Orchard Beach with the bus. We used to pack up early in the morning, and we used to take our picnic stuff, everything we ate, everything that was a blanket, and I did my homework there. Every Sunday morning, that was the outing, was Orchard Beach. So P.S., we go on a bus, we get off on Southern Boulevard where the Bronx Zoo is and Fordham Road to connect with another bus to go to Orchard Beach. So so I'm standing there, we're waiting for the bus to go to Orchard Beach. And we get off the bus, and my father sees about 6 young men, and they're all talking Yiddish together. They're all greenhorns, we call them. They're all talking Yiddish together. And my father says to me, he says, do you know they're talking about you? I said, really? I don't know. What do I know? Yes, they're talking about you. So he said, looks like a nice bunch of guys. I said, yeah, very nice. So a bus comes, and we get on the bus. They all want to get on the bus, but the door closes, and we are the only ones on the bus, and the door closed. We were standing in the bus, and that was the end of it. We go to the picnic grounds on Orchard Beach, and we put a blanket out, and I'm doing homework. I'm reading, or whatever I was doing homework. And my father says, he was reading a paper or something. My father says, look, he says to me, you came here to have a good time. You see those guys over there? All you have to do is get up, and they're playing, what do you call it again? Basketball. And all they do is, all you have to do is get up, they'll take you right away and you play with them. I was 17, and I was going to graduate that summer. And P.S., I get up. I said, no, I don't want to. Yes, he said to me, you should get up. All right, I'll get up. So I'll get up, and I go over there, and lo and behold, my husband stands there, and he throws me the ball. And he keeps throwing the ball to me. And everybody says, he found the girl from the bus stop. All his friends said they found the girl from the bus stop. So he takes me, accompanies me. Oh, no, that's not. The story goes, when I was sitting there, I forgot about that. I was sitting there, and in between my legs, the ball comes. It just happens to come right in between my legs. And I look up, and there's my husband. That's how and he said to me, would you like to play ball with us? And my father said, yes, she would. Yes, she would. And that's how I went to play ball with them. Okay, so I come back, and he accompanies me back, and my father says to him, Setz dich nieder, sit down. So I said, Gott and you, Mom and you, I was so upset with my father. And where were you from, and where do you live? He interrogates my husband, and he's answering everything in Yiddish. And all of a sudden, my father says, my husband says, he says to me, can I take you out tonight? I said, no, I'm busy. No, she's not busy, my father said. She's not busy. So already, I'm a liar already. So, okay, so I told him where I live. He's coming, and he came with a suit, all dressed up in a suit, and he lived 5 minutes within walking distance from me, near Jennings Street in the Bronx. His father had a grocery store. Okay, it doesn't matter.
Helga,
P.S.
wait.
They were very, very religious. And he had a history. He was born in Poland, and he was 17. He was in Russia. He was in a DP camp. He had a terrible story. He lost his brother in Russia, a 7-year-old boy, and he was a special guy. And I met his parents. They were very religious, very, very. No comparison to my parents. And they suffered a great deal. But they were wonderful people. I loved his mother and father very much so.
Helga, I
Yes.
think that we can sit and listen to you the
Okay,
whole night long.
But 1 second more. Do you mind? Is it okay? Okay. So P.S. He came to my husband came to my graduation, to Washington Irving graduation, and I worked for Houghton Mifflin Company, and for all the years I only had one job. That was a publishing house, and also another thing. It's very unique. What I wanted to say is I lost my track. Oh, I wanted to say something. Very important. Oh, I lost my
Your beautiful family.
I have a wonderful family. I have 3 beautiful kids, and one of them lives in Armonk, one lives in Scarsdale near me, and I have a son that lives in Israel for the last 15 or 18 years, and that's the story.
Grandchildren
I
and
have
great-grandchildren.
12 grandchildren. I have 12 wonderful grandchildren. The youngest is going to be 21 years old on Sunday. And she lives in Israel. She's in the Army. They've been in the Army, in the IDF, in Israel. And I have 3 great-grandchildren, and the 4th is on this way. And I've been very, very fortunate in my life. And I really believe that there is a lot of, everything is planned for you. Whatever happens is planned. This is how I believe. And that's it. I mean, there were lots of things in between that I haven't mentioned. What could I say?
Good evening. My name is Jared Science, and I'm a member of the Enough Club. Thank you so much, Helga. We are so grateful for you to share your story with us today. Elie Wiesel once said, "To hear a witness is to be a witness." Helga, by listening to your story today, we are now all witnesses. The Nazis set out to erase all traces of the Jews, but Helga, you achieved the opposite. You survived and thrived. Your story is now with us forever in our minds. We will never forget.
Good evening. My name is Jack Rosenbaum. I'm also an Enough Club member. To help our community remember, the students of Horace Greeley's Club Enough and the Town of Newcastle Holocaust and Human Rights Committee are excited to announce the 4th annual Writing and Arts Contest for Holocaust Remembrance for middle school and high school students. The contest launches tonight and will end on March 27th. The contest information can be found on mynewcastle.org on the Holocaust and Human Rights Committee webpage. We look forward to receiving your submissions. Thank you to everyone for your support and joining us tonight to remember.